Good Thursday afternoon, guys. My name is Jerry Miller, and welcome to the I Love CVille Show. Thank you kindly for joining us. A glorious day to be above the mud. Of course, we're live in Charlottesville, the Commonwealth, the country, and the world on the I Love CVille Network. We're presented by Skooma Boutique Dispensary, located next to Rapture on the downtown mall. Skooma Boutique Dispensary offers certificates of analyses on every item in the store, including CBD and their Delta 8. Skooma Boutique Dispensary has something that will help you sleep, help you from an anxiety standpoint, a pain management standpoint, locally owned and operated. Ting Fiber Internet, crazy fast internet, powers the network, and the good doctor, Scott Wagner of Scott Wagner Integrated Medicine, is changing people's lives. Who's got your back? Dr. Wagner's got your back. Judah Wickhauer, amigo, our North Star and our director. Studio camera, please. Very excited for today's show. Our friend, our comrade, all-around A-plus dude, Lee Elberson in the house. Lee, I'm going to start you with the round of applause.
Oh, man, you got the sound machine. That's awesome. No buzzers today, though, right?
No buzzers today.
Okay, good. No buzzers today.
You won the buzzer competition, so we had to retire them because you won in such convincing fashion. You would make a hell of a Jeopardy game show host. They announced the official hire, but Lee Elberson could have been a candidate and finalist for that position.
That actually, I think I probably could. I would be a terrible contestant. I have a very limited, I know just a very little bit about a lot of things, but my
hell of
focus.
A contestant.
Probably not.
You don't think so?
I've missed a lot in my history classes, I'll say that. Math and science, I have down 100%.
What is of any game show, and I know you're a tremendous poker player. At one time, you tried to make a living playing poker. You did make a living playing poker. Any game show most appealing to you that you enjoy watching?
You know, I generally look for games that I think I can win. Like you said, very competitive.
Yes.
So, yeah, I would, there's this old one, Press Your Luck.
Yeah.
Had an algorithm so that you could predict how to win the most, but several people got caught busting that algorithm.
They were cheating.
They were not cheating.
Okay.
They figured out the algorithm.
Okay.
And they used it to their advantage to beat the game.
Okay.
That's the whole point of gaming.
Okay. So
and we'll touch on that today about the skill games in Virginia. I've been following up on that story.
Is counting cards in blackjack cheating?
No.
No.
The casino
calls it cheating.
The casino calls it cheating, but it's not. You're not doing anything but utilizing the facilities, the faculties that you have, and getting an edge on the game.
Okay.
That's I would not consider that cheating. A casino is a private business. They can call it whatever they want.
Okay.
If you're going to beat them, they don't want that. They want to win more money than you. That's their goal. And so if you find a way to defeat that system, they will kick you out.
So counting cards.
Yes.
Okay. So guys, a lot we're going to cover today. We're going to talk the ban on gambling machines and skill games in the Commonwealth. We're going to talk Virginia Commonwealth University banning booze at Frats and Sororities.
Yeah.
The housing costs at the epicenter of Charlottesville and mask mandates. First, we're going to lead with this news. If you're just now tuning into the show, here's our first topic. Folks, this is from the Jefferson Theater, okay? This literally was posted a little short while ago. Jefferson Theater, due to the emergence of the Delta variant and the recent increase in COVID-19 transmissions across the area, the Jefferson Theater and Southern Cafe, beginning on Monday, will now require guests to show proof of vaccination or a negative test taken within the last 48 hours before they can get into the venue. One more paragraph, and then we'll get Lee's take. Upon arrival, all guests must present a state ID along with either a paper or digital copy picture of their vaccine card or proof of negative test. I can assure you this news will be on the 6 p.m. news tonight, the 11 p.m. news tonight, all the morning broadcasts tomorrow, and in the print editions of the Daily Progress. So Lee Elberson, the show is yours. The Jefferson and the Southern requiring proof of vaccinations or a negative test within the last 48 hours to get into a concert, starting on Monday.
I think it makes perfect sense from a business standpoint. If you are a business owner and you see a vulnerability, if they could trace an outbreak to the Jefferson, that would be detrimental to their business. They would lose staff. They would be forced to shut down to whatever their COVID policies are. Consumers or customers would be deterred from going there. So they're just doing everything they can to retain revenue. And I'm 100% in agreement with it. And I think it's any consultant that would come in and view vulnerabilities would say not asking for a vaccination card is a vulnerability. So ask for it, and then it's like an insurance policy. It's a free insurance policy for them.
I want to thank Vanessa Parkhill for setting this topic to us before the show started. So is this the beginning of vaccination passports? This is a vaccination passport, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, it's a dumbed down version with certain security issues in and of itself. But yeah, I think it's the first step towards requiring vaccine passports or the negative COVID test. Again, it's just trying to get a handle on a big unknown, which is how these Delta and Gamma variants are going to affect our population.
Let's talk about a negative COVID test, and let's compare and contrast it to a free vaccination that you can get anywhere. So this is where we're heading. I mentioned this on earlier shows this week. My beautiful wife and I spent a long weekend in Brooklyn. Many of the restaurants and bars that we went to in Brooklyn required essentially the vaccine passport, proof of vaccination before you could get into the bar. So marketplace, customers, people, they can get a negative COVID test within the last 48 hours, or they can get vaccinated. Correct me if I'm wrong. A COVID test costs money.
Most do, yeah,
okay.
Around $50.
Around $50. Yep. You're going to have to wait in line. There's the time value of money of getting a negative COVID test. I don't understand. I'm trying to be empathetic. You've taught me that I need to be more empathetic on your many appearances on this network. I'm trying to be more empathetic, like my friend Lee, who is Mr. Empathy here. Why would someone, trying to be empathetic, go with constant negative COVID tests as opposed to just getting the vaccine itself?
Yeah. So, I mean, I will go through my own personal journey as vaccines were becoming more widely available. And I was definitely vaccine hesitant.
Okay.
I have never gotten a flu shot, ever. I am a big believer in the biological machine that made the human body being very resilient. But I also understand that a pandemic is nature's way of controlling population.
Okay.
It's in this really interesting segment in this book, Sapiens, which Judah and I are reading. But when I looked at the cost-benefit analysis, you have the unknown of maybe not knowing what the long-term side effects of vaccines are. Okay? On the other side, I guess the downside is if I take my chances and don't get vaccinated, I could get COVID-19. Maybe I get lucky and I only have temporary effects. As I dug into it more and spoke with friends who do a lot of research in COVID vaccines, it's not like getting the flu where you get it and it's gone. Many people have severe long-term side effects. I know 2 runners in town that got it last year still can't run more than half a mile without having severe issues. That, sort of leaned me towards the edge. And then, honestly, I personally look at experts, at the CDC, at people I respect, and all of them have gotten vaccines, and all the immunologists and epidemiologists have said that there's a lot of research that shows that these vaccines are going to have very little long-term side effects. And so a lot of it is just based on who you trust, where you source your information. And I source my information from people that I respect, and that's why I made the decision to get the vaccine. I think a lot of this has to do with, and people say it all the time, it's an echo chamber that is, it's not just social media, it's everything you search. And if you search for something on your computer, for instance, an algorithm is going to determine that you like that, and it's going to force that. So if you say, are vaccines dangerous? All the stories you're going to see are that vaccines are dangerous. I would ask everyone to look at the science behind that and find out, are they actually dangerous, and think about the long-term side effects of getting COVID and having serious respiratory issues for the rest of your life. Most experts say that there's a very small percentage of the population that is going to have either an adverse effect, that's like parts per million immediately, or have a health condition that would make the vaccine cause complications. You're talking about few percents. So I think understanding that scope is what I did to make my decision.
Great take.
Thanks.
Misinformation spread by publicly traded companies in the business of making profit. Social media is exactly what you said, an algorithm game. The interaction with content that is potentially on your newsfeed anti-vax means you will continue to see more anti-vax content on your feed, which is directly or indirectly shaping your viewpoint or your perspective on something that is very important. If you're interacting with content that is pro-vaccination, you'll get more of that in your feed. That is absolutely factual what I just said here.
Yeah.
What is the role then of the Facebooks and the Twitters and the Instagrams and LinkedIns that are publishers of content?
Yeah, I think it's important to understand that I don't know. I think that people think that social media is natively nefarious and trying to force these negative things upon you. I think when you look at what artificial intelligence is, everything that we have now is very weak artificial intelligence. You know, we may think Alexa and Siri are very smart because we can ask them to do something and then it does it. Turn on the lights and it does it. But it doesn't understand what that means. So when you search for anti-vax, the algorithm isn't going through any sort of like moral compass and thinking like, oh, is this good or bad? It's just thinking the goal is to get more views. Now, I think that social media CEOs and social media giants in general are doing their part in trying to block people. Like, I think I just saw that Marjorie Taylor Greene's Twitter account got banned for
and
her.
Ran.
Yeah, and for sort of spreading this misinformation. And so, you know, again, science is our friend. Science is just the observation of what happens in the world around us. And if you can't back something by science, honestly, it's just a theory. I have crazy theories all the time, like, oh my gosh, maybe this is why I think about the same thing as Jerry. Maybe there's some neutrino interaction. I don't have any science backing it, so it's just a crazy idea. Don't spread your crazy ideas unless you have science is what should back and judge most of these decisions. And so I think social media companies need to first ban those, and then second, need to look at, like, is there a way to introduce morality into these search algorithms?
I love it. I love it. So one of our favorite viewers, and Vanessa, I sincerely mean this. I think you know this as well. Vanessa Parkhill routinely makes this show better with the comments and questions that she asks. Vanessa, one day you should come on the show. I don't know if you're up for that.
She hasn't been on the show?
She has not, but she makes us better. Vanessa, I'm serious. I seriously mean that. She says this: will at-home COVID tests be acceptable for entry to restaurants or events? Do those provide documentation that an establishment would be okay with, or something you need to get from a doctor? That is an excellent question. Can we take a rapid test at home that we administer ourselves, or is it going to have another level of credibility, if you may, meaning a doctor or a nurse or a medical professional administering the test? That's a good question.
Yeah, this is sort of like the Wild West. We're in a very unregulated market, and so I would assume it's going to be business to business. I would assume that most of them right now will accept any sort of COVID test. My friend last weekend had an exposure risk, and she went to the store to buy some, and in doing some research, many of them are only 60% accurate on whether or not you may have been exposed to the antibodies. And so
that's not great.
That's not great. And so, you know, right now that's probably going to be acceptable. As we try to get a better handle on this, you know, I think we're going to need more regulation on what we consider a definitive test. Right now, that might be good enough. It's showing that the person is actively trying to ensure that they're not spreading it. If you're an anti-vaxxer and you're not wearing a mask and you're not doing COVID tests, you are driving around without a seatbelt, drunk, you know, with no license, essentially. And that's the danger.
Philip Andrew Hamilton, thank you for sharing the show. He's running for for state delegate right now. He's in a head-to-head battle with Sally Hudson. Another question has come in, and Grayson just wants us to cut straight to the chase. Jerry, I love when you have Lee Elberson on your show. This guy knows school. You got to talk school. I'm on for the first 12 minutes because I have a 1 o'clock. Please ask him if he thinks school's going to make it through the semester. I cannot believe you brought that up. We literally were talking about this off air. Grayson, you're an important viewer of the show, and your time is invaluable. So we're going to pass on some of these topics. We're going to bring them up after this topic. Lee Elberson, does the fall semester go in person at public schools for the entire fall semester?
Nope.
Lee Elberson says no.
I give it I'm going to say about an 80% chance that after Thanksgiving, they're going to be virtual just like we did last year, and if not sooner. That's where I'm setting the sort of over-under date. I think there is a reasonable chance that before that, there will have to be virtual schooling, but I think there's a really good chance that after Thanksgiving, they'll be virtual.
You really think?
I think so.
So over-under is Thanksgiving. You're taking under Thanksgiving. So you're taking before Thanksgiving as school being pivoted to 100% virtual.
Yep.
The government is almost mandating in-person school now, no?
Yeah, I think that we're facing a really tough time in terms of how to cope with learning loss. You know, the learning loss is almost like you have a car that's like just out of warranty, the engine fails, and you think, okay, do I repair this engine or do I just buy a whole new car? It's very costly. In this analogy, building a new car is completely restructuring the education system. That car is, I think, way too expensive for us. So we're trying to figure out how to buttress the old system and how to fix the engine. And fixing the engine is, we know that kids had like about 55 to 60% learning, 40 to 50% learning loss last year. We can't afford another year like that. Otherwise, kids are going to have to repeat next year. There's just there's no way we can fix the engine again, I don't think. So they know that in person, it reduces that learning loss as much as possible.
Your team member, your colleague Noelle, watching the program as we speak.
She's always watching your program. Yeah, she's awesome.
Noelle, thank you for watching. You're A+. We enjoy when you watch. Kathleen Rodriguez, Sean Pendleton, Darren Pichota.
Darren Pichota. Yeah, Darren's my cousin in California. Sean Pendleton, great guy. He was on CIC's board with me for a while.
Welcome to the show, Sean. We love what CIC does on this program, or for this community. So Grayson has a follow-up question for you. So that means public school, no, let me start from the top. So Lee is predicting public schools to be going hybrid by Thanksgiving, if not earlier. Does he feel the same for private schools? I remember he's come on in the past and said the value proposition of private schools has never been greater. Is that the case again for this coming school year?
Yeah, independent schools aren't going to have any issues. It's a resource allocation issue. And just before the show, I just wanted to kind of a ballpark. I looked up the budget for St. Anne's versus the budget for CHS per student, and it's pretty it's like 3 times more budget per student at a school like St. Anne's. And so with that budget, they can allocate resources to ensuring that they have social distancing requirements, that they can do very explicit contact tracing, and it's a much smaller student body. It's 800 or 900 students in the entire school, whereas CHS is thousands, several thousand. So I don't think independent schools are going to have any issues. If they have issues, it'll be very short term, and then they'll go back to in person just as they did last year.
The opportunity to launch a private school and make money. I mean, this is as good a time as ever to launch a private school.
Yeah, you got $50 million?
I mean, what does it cost to launch a private school? Is it like?
It's probably, like, if you do a small private school, their budgets are probably several million, and you need probably 10 million or so to launch it.
Didn't someone pursue or ask you?
Yeah, somebody asked us last year to open up a Clayborne school with 10 or 11 students. At that size and for such a short-term period, it's just not worth it. If you're going to open up a school like K through 12, you're looking at millions of dollars of lifetime value per student. So it's usually worth the investment of raising that sort of capital. Again, they're all nonprofits, so that capital is put towards teachers and programming.
I'm going to paint a picture of some key performance indicators that I'm reading, okay, or I'm thinking about. So the month of August, this month, much of the country, much of the Commonwealth, Central Virginia, our community, traveling for vacation. August is a big travel month. Parents and kids want to travel before school starts. That's the first KPI. The second KPI, 25,000 UVA students flooding Charlottesville in T-minus 10 days or so. That's the second KPI. The third KPI, we have elementary, middle, and high schoolers returning to in-person learning. Greene County's already started, Louisa's already started, Fluvanna's already started, Charlottesville and Albemarle's about to start. Heck, the preschool, my kids in preschool is about to start at the end of this month. That's the third KPI. And the fourth KPI is flu season right around the corner. Winter colder months mean people aggregate and hang out inside more than they do outside. Inside hanging is clearly a closer setting than hanging outside where you can spread out more. So those 4 or 5 KPIs I just outlined, from my standpoint, I see a spike in Delta inevitably happening.
Definitely. I think all of those, with the exception of the flu season, I think we have several months before that gauge gets peaked out, but the rest of them are all peaked out, which is, just means that people are interacting more, and it's just a simple statistics problem. It's just a higher rate of contagion when those gauges are peaked, which is why we need mask mandates and increased vaccination rates. I did read something interesting. Charlottesville, fully vaccinated or Albemarle County, 73%.
Yeah. We're number 1 in the Commonwealth.
Do you want to know what it is in my hometown in Lafayette, Louisiana?
I would say it's below 50.
It's 32%. Completely opposite end of the spectrum.
That's terrifying.
Yeah, that is.
I mean, is the countrywide vaccination rate in America, you follow these things, isn't it like right around 50%?
Right around 50%. Very heavily correlated with...
area of living.
Voting preference.
Yeah,
it's you look at the way that the counties in the parishes, parish in Louisiana, where they vote, and that determines their vaccination status, which is kind of bizarre that it is so closely related to a political issue.
We've speculated about this before, almost a new kind of gentrification that happens tied to vaccinations and vax rates with communities. Let me see if memory serves correctly. Migrating patterns?
Changing human migratory patterns.
Okay, go down this road here.
Okay. Real quick sidebar. Did you see there was a story that they said if Florida was a different country, we would ban travel to it?
Dude.
Isn't that wild?
We had friends.
Oh, gosh.
We had friends this past weekend that were chilling. It's August. They're vacationing. It's a husband and wife. They went to Miami. They live in Boston. We were hanging with them in Brooklyn. They live in Boston. They were vacationing in Miami. They said it's like, to use your term, the Wild West down there. Like, they said COVID doesn't even exist in Florida.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it exists, but it's not being acknowledged.
Right. Yeah, I think in terms of the human migratory patterns, I think that what a person will do is, if you look at, like, if you get COVID, let's say that you are vaccinated or unvaccinated and you get COVID, let's assume that you're going to be out of work for several weeks. Your kids are going to be out of school for several weeks. Either you're going to need child care or you're going to be out of work. So you're going to lose, let's say, roughly 8 to 10% of your revenue unless you have some job that's going to be very forgiving. That is a pretty big chunk of your revenue. I would imagine that many people are going to want to go to a place where you could drop that down by several factors.
Ooh.
Right? A place like Florida, if they've got 25% vaccination rate and we have 75%, they're 3 times less likely for that to happen here in a place like Charlottesville. So you would think, all things being equal, that they would move from Florida to Virginia. Now, obviously, that doesn't happen because family ties and cultural fit play a lot into that. But I think you're still going to see some of those migratory patterns change if we have variants continuing for the next several years.
Well, I mean, that's why the New York Times was championing Charlottesville and Albemarle as the premier vacation destination on the East Coast because of our vax rates. So the world's newspaper is telling all its digital and print readership to flood our area to vacation because we're safe. Scare the hell out of me in one way. The other side of me, the businessman, is like all for it because we have incremental dollars coming in and people not taxing our infrastructure while spending those incremental dollars. But, I will throw this to you here. How do you see the teachers union, the second largest teachers union in America, The president of that teachers union says on Meet the Press this past Sunday that we should have a mandate for teachers at vaccinations. Okay? Do we think that when these kids go back to school, 12 and under, not all teachers have been vaccinated, although we think a large chunk are. How do we see what transpires in like the first month of school?
Yeah, so I would imagine, in seeing some of the plans that are happening nationwide, and I think some of the plans that are happening locally, the first month it is going to be very different than the rest of the school year, or the way they're planning the rest of the school year. I think they're planning for the first month to try to keep students distance and to try to segment students into different learning populations so that they can catch up on the material. So, I think those two factors together might help minimize the spread within the first month. Now, this is going to be an environment where you go from the students only interacting with, let's say, 20 to 30 people a week to interacting potentially with hundreds or even thousands. So I think you're going to see an immediate spread, and teachers who are unvaccinated is a big liability for a school. This is why teachers unions are asking for this. It's a huge liability. They're already at pretty big staffing issues and have budgetary constraints. If a teacher goes down, it's very resource intensive to try to replace that teacher even in a substitute capacity. Not to mention the fact that the students are going to be affected with pretty severe learning loss.
One of the teachers in Charlottesville City Schools, an elementary school teacher, shared a screenshot of an email that she sent to the Human Resource Department of Charlottesville City Schools, and it's essentially about there's no COVID leave policy in place this year for teachers. So if you were to need to quarantine, the teachers would have to use their sick time and not COVID leave time, which is different than this past school year that happened, the one that just transpired. Let's get to that topic in moments. Before we do, James Watson's watching the show. We love you, James Watson. We appreciate your support. He says, Jerry and Lee, one of my kids will be attending a local city elementary. Apparently, that particular school normally has 400 students, but going into this school year, there are 260 students. 260 versus 400. Possibly some of the city schools will have a smaller population and even a better student-teacher ratio. I don't know the status of the entire city school system, though. That could be a positive. Better teacher-student ratio.
Definitely. I think that's the big reason why independent schools are so successful is that they keep the student to teacher ratio down as low as possible. So that could definitely be a positive. I wonder if the other 140 students are going to be virtual.
Or do they go to private school or homeschool?
Yeah.
It could be Alex is watching the show, your beautiful better half. Hello, Alex. Welcome to the program. Throw this to you. What do you make of the no COVID leave policy in place for this year with Charlottesville City Schools?
Yeah, I think, I think that there should be a COVID leave policy for vaccinated staff, and maybe not in an ideal world, it would be a way to encourage, or if you're not going to mandate vaccinations, if you're going to mandate all teachers to be vaccinated and not offer them a COVID vaccination policy, you're going to be introducing a problem. It just by the fact of statistics, some vaccinated people are going to get COVID and going to need that. And so you're going to see leave days increase, which means stress is going to increase, learning loss is going to increase. And so I think that's a bad idea for a vaccinated population.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think you could do it and say here's what we do for vaccinated, here's what we do for unvaccinated. I think there's a lot of legal liability with that. But for vaccinated staff, they couldn't do anything about it.
If you have to use your sick leave or your vacation time and you're a teacher and you get COVID, does this not almost encourage the teachers, and I'm not saying all teachers would do this, this is a talk show topic. Some of us have nefarious tendencies, not all of us do. It's safe to say that's just human nature. If you have to use your sick time or your vacation time, if you're a teacher and you get COVID, doesn't that almost encourage the non-disclosure of getting COVID?
Probably, yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
I mean, and I don't think it's necessarily nefarious. I just think that you could imagine a scenario where you're stuck between a rock and a hard place.
Yeah.
And like you're barely making ends meet, and it's like you're going to have to leverage, you're going to have to take a pay cut, or you're going to have to borrow vacation days.
Exactly.
You know.
That's what I'm saying, right?
Yeah.
I mean, right now, a lot of the teachers can't afford to live where they work. Now we're basically saying the few perks they have may get eroded if they get COVID. The co-chairwoman of the Lee Elberson fan club is watching, Cindy Elberson from Lafayette, Louisiana. Hello, Cindy.
Hey,
Alex
Mom.
is the other co-chairwoman as well. We established that on a previous show. We'll get to these questions coming in. Before we do, we got some topics that we need to bring up here. The Erpe family is watching the program.
Oh man, Alex Erpe is just he's wonderful. I haven't gotten a chance to meet his dad yet, but I've watched the show with his dad. They're both great.
You would love Xavier Erpe. Xavier, the closer Erpe, the Mariano Rivera of Emergent Financial Services. Nicholas Erpe is watching the program too. How about the mask mandates in a previous interview we did with Alex Erpe on this show? Where do you want to start?
Yeah, so I think Alex brought up something interesting that we had talked about in a previous show, maybe sometime last year, and that's that, a mask mandate statewide or even locally sounds great, but what you're essentially doing is you're leveraging business owners to enforce that policy. And so I think, Alex said it really well, saying, does this make, you put business owners in a hard position, and it probably discriminates against minority-owned businesses and maybe businesses that see minorities or low vaccinated population, that they have a bigger brunt of this mass policing to have to carry than other comparable businesses. So, honestly, we have it posted on our doors that if you're vaccinated, you have to wear a mask, and if you're unvaccinated, you have to wear a mask, and if you're vaccinated, you don't have to wear a mask. That is probably changing, mainly because as the Delta variant starts to expand, we're going to have to think, do I want people to have to prove that they're vaccinated, or should we just have everybody wear a mask all the time?
Or you could say, proof of vaccination required to come in, and you still have to mask.
No shirt, no shoes, no mask, no service. I saw that on your show the other day. Yeah, I think that's becoming more commonplace as we are deeper into this pandemic. You hope that some of the pushback of infringing on civil liberties is starting to diffuse a little bit, and people are being more comfortable with having to wear a mask to go into a place of business. I'm lucky we work in a place of business where I could ask any of our customers to put on a mask, and I likely wouldn't get much pushback. I could imagine many establishments where you ask a customer to put on a mask, and it may come to blows.
Oh yeah.
And so those
like
business,
a bar.
Yeah, those business owners. A bartender. You're going to ask a 120-pound bartender to fight back against this 200-pound person who's maybe fighting back with them? No. And so what is the police responsibility here? Are they going to stand at every single door and help us police? Or are they funded to do that?
I mean, the mask mandate again is prioritizing big box brands, publicly traded companies. We saw how Lowe's, how Walmart, how Home Depot, how Target were prioritized and got a huge market advantage during COVID in 2020. If we do a mask mandate, these big box brands have the cash on their balance sheets to potentially have a mask bouncer at the door. The mom and pop shop does not have the cash position to take an employee that's working on something for the business and say, your time is now being spent being a mask bouncer at the front entrance to our retail establishment or restaurant establishment. Let's start with that one, and then let's go down the minority-owned business route next. But first, let's go big box, publicly traded versus mom and pop, and how this could impact things.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. We saw in COVID, in every step of the way, in PPP funding and the businesses that were most affected, the big box companies generally got favored. And it's not just the mask bouncer. I mean, somebody who owns a small bodega in Charlottesville, they operate on really razor thin margins. If you're going to require somebody to wear a mask coming into your store, I think you have to provide masks. I mean, that's what we do, and I think that's what most businesses should do. And even that is that's not a small cost. I mean, maybe you're spending $50 a week on that.
Allergies. I'll throw this to you. You have to provide the mask?
I mean,
I think you might be right on that.
Yeah, well, it's a calculus. You're forcing a business owner to have to go through that calculus, thinking, hey, if I pay $2 a mask, if somebody's going to come in and they're not going to wear a mask, and I tell them they can't come in, or if I pay for a $2 mask and they will come in, am I going to make $2 in profit on them on average? I mean, it's more load you're putting on a small business owner who's already stretched thin and already is operating on razor thin margins.
How about, and Alex, you did put this well. There's a direct correlation, and this is factual. I'm just going to straight up say this. There's a direct correlation between vaccinations and a higher rate of vaccinations among folks that are white and then among folks that are people of color. Mm-hmm. Okay? The numbers speak for themselves. You can look it up. Yep. Look at the demographics here. So if the proof of vaccination is required to do business, that right there is going to prioritize and give the edge to, okay, how do you see it playing out? And then I'll give my take.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to put minorities at a disadvantage, both as consumers and business owners. And I don't know of a good solution to that right now. I just know that on the other side of that coin is this pandemic that's going to shut down all small businesses if we don't get a handle on this pandemic. And so, I don't know what the solution is. I'm sure Alex might have had some recommendations when he was talking about it.
He made these points that you're making too, and he completely said this is the collateral damage that could happen, that our minority-owned businesses may suffer, lose market share, and we could see the closure of these minority-owned businesses. I mean, think about this. When the conversation is had and the demographics of who's getting vaccinated and where, that could deprioritize minority-owned businesses in highly unvaccinated municipalities. Louisa County, for example, I made this point earlier this week. Louisa County, less than half of Louisa County is vaccinated.
Was that the school system that was not going to require masks, and then they reversed it the next day? Yeah, right.
Doug Straley, and I love you, Doug Straley. I know you guys watch the show. Superintendent of Louisa Schools. He was very pro no mask, or excuse me, pro-choice of mask or not to mask. And then the very next day, he said, no, we got to mask up. Now the governor is I mean, they're making masks required.
Yeah. I am behind that move. I support it 100%.
Do you why don't we go down this? The banning of booze at Virginia Commonwealth University sorority and fraternity events, because I know you got a hot take on this.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. Yeah, I'm very lucky. Noel, my executive assistant who watches your show a lot, mentioned it, and I mean, a couple of things come to mind. First of all, I mean, in some ways, booze should be mostly illegal at fraternities and sororities.
You think so?
Well, because you can't drink until you're 21 in the state of Virginia.
Okay. Most
people in a fraternity and sorority, I'm guessing, are under the age of 21. If you just look at the bell curve of students in college. So I guess if I'm just clarifying what they're saying here is, before a cop could come in and see alcohol, and if nobody was drinking it, couldn't really do anything unless if there was one person who's 21 or over. Now they're saying, regardless of what the age demographic is, there's no booze allowed in at all. Is that the ban happening?
Yeah, so okay. VCU, I'll set the stage here and then get out of your way.
Great.
There was a pledge at VCU at one of its frats that had, unfortunately, way too much to drink in a hazing incident, and this young man died because of alcohol poisoning. Virginia Commonwealth University earlier this week made the announcement that there will be no booze allowed, period, at frat and sorority parties. That's the topic at large here. Now we get this big, beautiful brain offering poignant perspective.
Yeah, so I think I understand the university's perspective. They're trying to show that they will take action if they see a hazing ritual, which in and of itself is not a bad thing. I was in the Marine Corps. We got hazed. I watched people get hurt in hazing incidents for fraternities and sororities and military have hazing rituals is to make sure that we've all gone through the same amount of suck before moving forward.
Yeah. Rite of passage.
Rite of passage. And in that way, we think that helps bind us together so that, you're with them for life, basically. Yeah. I think in terms of a fraternity, there's other ways to sort of form that brotherhood. Getting blackout drunk, I don't think is a great way to sort of form that brotherhood. I think there's a bunch of other things that they could do. I'm curious now, similar to the mask policy, who is enforcing this no alcohol policy? Are the campus police coming into the fraternities and sororities every week to check? Or are they telling the president, hey, you're responsible for this?
That's a great question.
Right?
I mean, during COVID, let's take Virginia Tech during COVID. Virginia Tech, this time last year, brass leadership at Virginia Tech said there's going to be no parties. We have a strict rule on gathering. I think it was 10 people or less this time last year at Virginia Tech. And fraternities were having parties. And campus police was going around and seeing these parties, reporting it to dean's offices at Virginia Tech, and students were getting expelled from Virginia Tech for not following the no gathering or the no party rule in Blacksburg. So I wonder if it's going to be something similar at VCU. A lot of these schools aren't messing around anymore.
I don't think that they can, because they don't want to be, they're going to lose attendees as the next year of students. Schools are they're not looking at this year. They're looking at how they retain revenue for the next decade. And if schools are known as like, hey, this is going to be a hotbed of just like partying and COVID spreading, then they don't, parents are not going to allow their kids to go there, even though, in most cases, the kid's choice. So I think it's a smart move. I do remember reading a study a long time ago about dry schools. I can't remember. I think Ole Miss might be a dry school, and I visited there. And then in looking at the research...
Ole Miss?
Oh, I think so. I could be mistaken. I visited a bunch of schools when I was going to grad school, but I think... the study I saw says that the overall percentage of drinking goes down, but the percentage of incidents of alcohol-related incidents doesn't really change that much. Which is to say that if a student wants to do something, they're going to do it, and it probably shows that if you ban it, it's going to make it this taboo thing that they're going to want to do it even more. Probably the decriminalization of marijuana has similar effects, and they've seen that. So I wonder what you're going to see happens to students and the incidents of alcohol-related incidents. Certainly at fraternities, I don't think a fraternity wants to get its charter revoked, so I think you're going to see internally them start to obey it. But if this starts to be campus-wide, what the effects will be.
What is, okay, and this is just maybe my closed-minded thinking here. What is the point of joining a fraternity if there are not parties and drinking and get-togethers?
I did not join a fraternity. I was already in the Marine Corps, so I was in one of the most intense fraternities in the world. I would imagine that, there's honor societies and fraternities that are trying to do good around campus.
So you were involved with many of those academic,
definitely
high grade.
Yeah. I had most of my friends were part of Kappa Alpha, and the Kappa Alpha charter at University of Louisiana got revoked for it's like they were trafficking drugs or something. So I think that to me was reason enough to stand away, because I was thinking, I can go to parties. I don't need an extra reason to have to slack off and go to parties. And so I wonder if maybe this will change the atmosphere, saying, hey, what we're going to try to do is build you professionally. Let's build a professional network like they do at Harvard and Ivy Leagues, so that, hey, when you're looking for a job in 10 years, come to my firm. I'll hire you. Maybe that would be a good thing, right?
That's well said.
Right.
That's a good take right there. Carol Thorpe's got a comment and a question for you.
Okay.
And then James has got a follow-up on what we were talking about with minority-owned businesses and the demographics that are out there with folks of color not getting vaccinated at the same frequency that folks that are white are. So first, Carol Thorpe. She says, yesterday, Jerry and Lee, the Albemarle County Board of Supervisors, voted to require vaccinations of all county employees. I don't know if the Charlottesville city government has done the same yet, but if not, I am certain they will. They have actually done that. Question, do you believe those who vote to require vaccination of their government employees should avoid being hypocrites by getting vaccinated themselves?
So she's asking if I'm a voter and the elected authorities are required to get vaccinated, I should also get vaccinated?
That's the...
Yeah, again, trying to be empathetic to people's reasons for not getting vaccinated. I don't know that I would necessarily correlate those two.
She says, it seems to me our elected officials should live by the same laws, codes they enact and lead by example.
Oh, I'm sorry. She said the other way around. If we're going to require the population, that we require the elected officials?
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Well, I think with few exceptions, I think that the few exceptions piece is where this gets murky, right? Like, oh, my child has this really rare condition and I don't know enough. I think being it's better to be unvaccinated. I mean, I have a lot of friends who say, I have a child with a condition. I don't want to get vaccinated because I don't know if there's going to be any long-term effects, maybe for future children or this. And so,
I have friends that are pregnant that are not choosing to get vaccinated because they're not sure the impact it could have on their pregnancy. Yeah. I also have friends that are also pregnant that have been vaccinated.
Yeah. So I think requiring our officials to get vaccinated, if they're meeting in public places and there's a chance that all of them could get COVID, I would say yes. But if they were vaccinated, I don't see what that serves outside of maybe some hypocrisy.
James Watson's got a follow-up on our topic. I'm not sure I trust the stats. At least in the everyday perception that I've experienced, I see more people from minority communities getting vaccinated, wearing masks, and doing the right thing. I see a whole lot of non-minority folks complaining that their rights are being taken away. Even when I've traveled across the country during Corona early months, most of the folks I saw not wearing masks were not from the minority community. More often than not, I see white males complaining about having to wear a mask or not wearing them while I'm traveling.
I will acknowledge that there could be some localized phenomenon. I think the statistics that are being quoted are national, and I have seen those as well.
They are national.
Yeah, I think those are national statistics. So there may be some hyper-localized phenomena where it is the case that minorities are more vaccinated than their white counterparts. But I think what he's saying is true. Is that the like anti-vaxxers in a movement is being predicated maybe potentially against white males and ultra-conservative groups. I think the group that we're talking about with minorities is vaccine hesitancy and not pushing a personal agenda, but just hesitant that maybe the government is trying to force something on them that is going to be safe given the history we've had of oppressing minorities in this country. So I think we should separate those two people, anti-vaxxers versus, vaccine hesitancy and worrying about, like, I don't know how this is going to affect me personally versus someone who's saying, like, the government's getting my rights or whatever.
She says, thank you for your thoughtful answer, and follows up, will city and county employees have the same exemptions you just mentioned, Lee? Hard to say.
Yeah, I think the murky water in
such murky water.
Yeah, I definitely don't think everyone in the entire world should be 100% required to get vaccinated. I know that there's always exceptions to the rule. I don't think we have enough data to understand those exceptions. Based on the data I've seen, it's single-digit percents that people who have these issues. So there is a big gap between single-digit percents and 50% of the world, or whatever the global percentage is. So I don't know who determines whether or not you get an exemption. Obviously, it's okay to have 5% of the people not get vaccinated, but how do we close the gap of those other 45%?
This is from Spencer. He says, Jerry, I love the show. I was listening to you earlier this week talking about the VCU topic you're talking now. You asked the question, how would this impact Charlottesville if UVA chose to ban booze at frats and sororities? Ask Lee that question if you could, please.
Yeah, I think when you look at the student body, the student population at UVA, with few exceptions. I've seen the fraternities and sororities that we interact with actually do have our staff come in and talk about, hey, here's what it takes to go to business school. Here's what it takes to go to law school. So I think that there already is a pedigree of academic excellence built into them. If you ban them, I don't think it would have as severe backlash as it would at another similar university. Again, I think
You want to throw a similar university name out there? You choose.
Yeah, I think. Well, you could probably use U.S. News and World Reports in terms of how they rate the caliber of students. So yeah, I would say William and Mary, Washington and Lee, if you're looking for local schools.
Then maybe Michigan.
Yeah, Michigan. Yeah, maybe
UCLA.
Yeah, probably UCLA. So, although UCLA's got its own sort of like party atmosphere, I think any school that's branded as if you try to do this in Louisiana, my alma mater, University of Louisiana Lafayette, there would be an outcry. They would be picketing and protesting because it's known as a party school, and that is, in a sense, like, oh, we're partying. I don't think people go to UVA in hopes that, like, oh, I can't wait to party a lot. They want to, but I think people go to UVA hoping that they're going to get a degree that will help get them a better job.
That's a great take. That's a great take. Businesses locally, if booze is banned at frats and sororities, you've got to think that puts tailwinds and momentum behind patronizing the corner.
Yeah, I honestly wonder, like, if students are dead set on drinking. It's banned at sororities and fraternities. Well, they'll just find somewhere else to
do it.
To do it, right?
Yeah.
It's the old adage about, like, parents, having, like, underage kids in their house. Just like, why do you let your 16-year-old drink in your house? It's like, well, I'd prefer they be drinking here in a place that I can control than somewhere else.
Yeah.
If they're going to find somewhere else, I think that's why you might see incidents of alcohol-related incidents stay the same or not go down to the point at which you will, because they'll be doing it maybe in a more dangerous environment. I don't know. I'm speculating here.
More comments coming in. We will get to these comments, but we also have other topics we want to cover, including the ban on skill games in gas stations and convenience stores.
Skill games, such a terrible misnomer.
Yeah, it's their gambling machines. They're essentially slot machines. So we've all been in gas stations or convenience stores recently, and we've seen individuals pumping dollar bills and money into these video poker machines, video roulette machines. They're gambling machines. Somehow they've been branded, the perception has been managed that they're skill games, and because that perception was managed or created by lobbyists representing the owners and makers of these skill games, that perception allowed the government and the Commonwealth to approve these gambling machines for the sake of generating revenue during COVID. And they did generate revenue, like $100 million for education from these skill games this past year. So here's the nitty-gritty and the question that I asked earlier this week. In the Commonwealth alone, we're going to see 5, 6, 7 brick-and-mortar casinos. We know those are happening. In the Commonwealth alone, FanDuel and DraftKings, major players in gambling, were allowed in Virginia. You can place bets on FanDuels and DraftKings.
They bring online poker. I'm going to be the happiest guy in the world.
Online poker is going to get Lee Elberson like the Cheshire Cat with a sleeve of Ritz crackers and some Cheese Whiz, smiling ear to ear. He's going to be really happy if online poker is allowed in Virginia. Yeah. So here's the question I asked. Government in Virginia says yes to big gambling. And big gambling is brick and mortar casinos, a lot of them with ties to Las Vegas. They say yes to online gambling, publicly traded companies, DraftKings and FanDuel. They say no to slot machines and gas stations and convenience stores owned by mom and pops, local people, many of them minority-owned businesses.
Yeah, so I think that, it's sort of the big corporate America sort of out, like that's the feel you get, that it's like it's always going to be big corporations that are going to eke out the sort of mom and pop stores. I'm curious about this because, again, I hate that they call them skill games. Skill would insinuate that if you do it over a long enough time, you will get better at it. But those machines, you're going to lose 70 to 80% of the time, if not more. So, like you said, call them gambling machines. I did some research in looking at this because, I think maybe the danger, maybe the argument is that this is predatory gambling. There are several petitions that are up in the state of Virginia and nationwide to stop predatory gambling, where you concentrate your efforts on either minorities or very under-resourced individuals and have them spend their rent money on these machines. Most of the research shows that that's actually not the case with slot machines. Slot machines are generally done by people ages like over 55 or 60 and have over $60,000 in household income. So they're there to have a good time. If they get lucky, great. If not, then they're not necessarily gambling away their rent money. So I'm not sure if the argument that you are preventing predatory gambling in those machines for minorities that are doing the gambling. Let's take the business owners outside of this. So I think that's an argument that they might make and probably have made. So I don't know if that argument holds, which means that if you're going to allow gambling at big casinos, you should allow gambling at the small mom and pop stores.
That's what you feel? That's your take?
I think so. I think it should be a universal policy. Unless we have research that shows that actually what it's doing is people are taking their rent checks there, and it's predatory gambling on minorities, right?
Like payday loans.
Like payday loans, yeah. We don't want that to be the case, but if that's not the case, then you should allow mom and pop stores to have an additional area of income. And honestly, that's going to come back to us. That money is taxed and regulated, and we're going to get a piece of that as taxpayers and citizens of this Commonwealth.
Marge Diaz, welcome to the broadcast. Lee, you got Louisiana, North Carolina, folks in outside Atlanta watching the broadcast. I see folks in Hendersonville, North Carolina watching the show. A lot of Northern Virginia and Richmond. He's the CEO of Clayborne Education. Do we think, is it a fair comparison to correlate the demographic of people that utilize slot machines in casinos to the slot machines in convenience stores and gas stations?
I don't know that. So I think that's the argument that you need to think about is people going to a slot machine in a casino are going
airfare,
hotel, yeah, exactly.
Multiple days.
They're doing it as a vacation
experience.
Whereas somebody going to a gas station,
is local.
Yeah.
Break from work.
Yep.
After work.
Yeah. So I think you need to look at the demographics of those people. I would not agree with something that is predatory against minorities or under-resourced individuals as a whole, regardless of their ethnicity.
Vanessa Parkhill has a great comment, and you're 100% right. She said, didn't Playboy cite UVA as the top party school years ago? Most who live in CVille know alums and current students. While not every student there places a high priority on partying, I'd say that social life is still a key component for kids choosing UVA. The school has such a great reputation deserved and is such a great value, it's easy for parents to look past that and encourage their kids to attend. I went to UVA. I was a social chair and rush chair at Phi Kappa Psi, the fraternity that's at the end of the Mad Bowl when you're going down Rugby Road. I will say that the circles I ran, and maybe it's the circles I chose to run in, definitely put a high prioritization on partying. I think the future, and I'm curious of your take on this, I think the future of Greek life in general, and I hate to say this because still some of my best friends are from the fraternity, the future of Greek life in general at colleges and universities across America is not a bright future. For every child or every student that's getting this like alcohol poisoning, hazing incident, someone passes away. I mean, we read about this often. There's also quite a bit of like sexual misconduct that happens within Greek systems and organizations.
Yeah.
I am not bullish on the overall future of Greek life at colleges and universities.
You're the bear in this scenario.
Wow,
I feel like I'm always the bear.
You're often the bear.
I am gonna disagree for the sake of a talk show.
Okay.
That we used to get a lot of there was a website, I forgot what it was called, GreekLifeSomething.com, and the majority of people that we would get were coming to us looking for some sort of test prep to go to graduate school, and we do see that focused in on maybe it's just a subset of the fraternities that we work with are focused on what's the next step after college. And I wonder if this is just a chance to dissociate social life with hardcore drinking or even like that sort of alcohol consumption. I wonder if you just rebrand yourself as an organization that really is trying to give back to the community, which I know if you read the core values and the mission statements of a lot of fraternities, they say they're going to give back to the community.
Right.
They say they're looking for academic excellence. Maybe this is a chance to brand yourself as doing that and saying, hey, look, we're not focused on drink. You can drink anywhere. You don't have to drink at the fraternity house. Go do that on your own time. We're going to focus on making you a better academic student and preparing you for the future.
We had our philanthropy was a dodgeball tournament.
Sorry.
And the dodgeball tournament was, we had a dodgeball tournament in front of the frat house, and you had to pay to get in, and then we donated the money, and then we had some beers. That's what our dodgeball tournament was.
That sounds fun, actually.
It was fun. You would have enjoyed it. You seriously would have been, and I bet you would have been really good at it too.
Yeah.
This guy's
really
a good athlete. You were intrigued by the topic of housing costs at the heart and epicenter of Charlottesville.
Yeah, again, I thank Noelle for putting this on my radar because she watches your show quite a bit. But yeah, I think
Thank you, Noelle.
Remind me of what the topic of conversation you've had on your previous shows was. You're basically talking about how it's just making it more expensive to live in the city, so therefore, like, you're getting this gradient of housing costs, and so it's just driving. Is that
That's
the
right.
goal
That's
of it?
right.
Okay.
So the further you wait, it's the drive to you qualify mantra. Keith's created that little moniker or that phrase. So as you drive away from the city of Charlottesville, the housing becomes more affordable. As you drive away from the city of Charlottesville, while the housing becomes more affordable, you're offsetting some of that affordability with wear and tear on your vehicle, transportation, fuel and gasoline costs, and even more importantly, the opportunity cost of your time of commuting to and from the epicenter of employment. So the thinking is the closer you are to UVA or the city, the more expensive the housing is. And as you get more into Central Virginia, it becomes less expensive. You're essentially seeing, back to migration patterns here, you're essentially seeing zip codes, and this has been the case for generations, zip codes of affluence and massive wealth, and then other zip codes of middle-class wealth, blue-collar wealth, and then other zip codes of low-income wealth or poverty.
This, correct me if I'm wrong, this isn't a unique problem. This seems like probably every major metropolitan area. It happens in Paris, it happens in Houston.
For sure.
It has to do with the free market. You have a place, there's a lot of people in one place, and therefore you can just charge more, which is why, a restaurant here is going to have to pay a higher lease and can charge a lot more than if you go open up out in, off of 151 somewhere.
Yeah.
I guess what we're trying to figure out is how to subsidize that cost with affordable housing, and that's
right.
what they're saying. So the affordable housing crisis in Charlottesville, this is something I don't know, but like if you look at places like DC or maybe even Houston for that matter, there it's pretty well developed. There's not a lot of greenery. But if you look at the Google Maps view of Charlottesville, we've still got a fair amount of greenery. So the affordable housing cost is part of it due to the fact that we want to retain a certain percentage of greenery and not overdevelop our area?
Well, here, I can offer some perspective on this.
Okay, because I don't know this very well.
So city of Charlottesville is 10.2 square miles.
Yeah.
Most of the city of Charlottesville is developed. It's landlocked, has nowhere really to go but up. Albemarle County has a lot of developable space, but according to our comprehensive plan, and how the county of Albemarle is run, only 5% of Albemarle County is earmarked for development. And of that 5%, Susan Steinmart, Thomas Jefferson Community Land Trust Executive Director, told me this. Of that 5% of Albemarle County, that is both residential and commercial, and not all the land has the terrain that it can be developed. Some of it's rocky, some of it's hilly, it can all be developed. So you take all of Albemarle, only 5% can be developed. That includes residential and commercial, and not all the land in that 5% pocket is actually developable land.
Yeah, so I guess in terms of trying to subsidize the total cost of, like, the gradient cost, I guess, Has Keith put together a graph of what that gradient cost looks like?
No,
if he hasn't, I could do that.
Yeah, I was
for
going to
him.
say,
Yeah.
you have that skill set. We don't
He gives
have
me
that
the data.
skill set.
I could crunch that. So I guess, yeah, there's more than just affordable housing, because that's only going to go part of the way. I guess a lot of it is public transit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I almost think, and like the more I spend thinking about this topic, I almost think the prioritization, creating more housing that's affordable, is not keeping up with the invisible hand of the free market. The free market is going like, say, 100 miles an hour, where the stakeholders that are trying to create more affordable housing stock are going like 10 miles an hour. So the little steps forward that the stakeholders at affordable housing are doing are being dominated and dwarfed by capitalism.
Yep.
We should perhaps instead prioritize a ubiquitous and reliable transportation system. And if we prioritize this ubiquitous and reliable transportation system, that will create affordability, because someone could cut their car payment, won't need to pump gas in their car, won't have to take their car to the mechanic.
Yeah.
And that money they save of not having a car payment, the fuel, not going to the mechanic, the taxes on the car, could instead be spent on a house down the road or to create generational wealth. So maybe the prioritization should be this badass, approachable, consistent, and reliable Central Virginia-wide transportation system that maybe is done with a public-private partnership that incentivizes an entrepreneur. I mean, heck, Andre Xavier and John Craig at CVille Hop-On Tours have created an affordable and ubiquitous and approachable transportation system for getting to and from vineyards and breweries.
In the new infrastructure bill, they have a pretty big line item for autonomous buses.
There you go.
Do you know how long it takes? So if I drove over here from my office at Woodbrook,
Okay.
our new office is right off near Lowe's.
Okay.
It takes me 15 minutes to drive here.
Okay.
I have an employee that takes the bus. Do you know how long it takes to get from here to my office at Woodbrook if you take the bus?
How long?
An hour and a half.
See, that's messed
So
up.
it's 6 times, it's like, yeah, if you're talking round trip, it's 3 hours out of your day. So like that is just, like you said, massive opportunity cost, and it's just really not feasible if you're a parent. So yeah, I think that's a better way to attack it. You're not going to do it with just affordable housing. Not to say you should stop it, but you need to look at other approaches to help fix the problem.
I mean, can you imagine if UVA put its students or a school department or did some kind of case study and said, students, this is your case study for this semester, creating a transportation system for Central Virginia? I mean, this is a crazy proposition. This is how my mind works here. I'm a very big picture type of guy. Can you imagine the huge success and viability of a gondola system in Central Virginia or Albemarle County or the city of Charlottesville, where transportation was almost done in ski lift or gondola fashion, avoiding the traffic on roads, creating a more sustainable environment? Climate change is important to you?
Yeah,
Okay.
I talked about this in the show, but it's tough when it's localized. Yeah, where else has a gondola system been effective, though?
I mean, I can't. You would know better.
I don't know that there's many places outside of, there's some Nordic countries and some places in Europe where it has worked, but I think those are very rocky. Here's what I
Let's ask
propose.
the viewers. Viewers, do we know of
Yeah.
a gondola system that works? Judah, can you see if there's a gondola? He's already on it. He's amazing. If there's a gondola system that's worked in a city of some kind, and where?
Here's what I would propose.
Well, no, there's been no gondola system in Charlottesville that we know of, but somewhere.
We only have one escalator.
That's right.
So here's what I would recommend. UVA owns so much real estate in Charlottesville. If UVA built an institute, let's say the Institute for Data Science, if they moved it to Albemarle County and then developed a transit system to get from UVA there, and basically helped us subsidize that, then they would have incentive to want to get to the outskirts of the county, and they could stop, like a big part of it when they buy all of this real estate is it's just going to be monopolized, and I understand trying to keep it close, but if they built an institute out in the county and then developed a transit system to get their students to and from there, then it's just a matter of, okay, now how do we subsidize that so the average citizen can take that?
Are you alluding to Fashion Scare Mall?
Whatever UVA wants to do, that would be a great start. Yeah.
Whatever UVA wants to do, they can do it. Keith Smith, welcome to the broadcast. You want to pass your idea to Keith? If he gets you the data and you can create for him?
Yes, Keith. I'd like to create a gradient graph that shows the two things. One is the housing gradient, and then I would put together the data for the average transportation cost, assuming that, like opportunity cost, let's assume that the average worker's value is $15 an hour, or $20 an hour, or whatever it is. So if you pass me the housing data, I've asked this from you, and I think he's got it all. Give me all the housing data for our locality, and I'll put together this gradient graph when you can show it on one of the next Real Talks.
Okay, fantastic. Yeah. That would be a fantastic show topic. China is banning tutoring?
Yeah, big news in education. Yeah, China is banning tutoring. And
why would China do that?
Yeah, good question. So I'm not entirely, their motivations, they say that it's gotten increasingly expensive. The average Chinese citizen spends about $14,000 a year on private tutoring.
How much does the average American citizens spend?
Like a third of that or something. It's pretty low. Like, yeah, or much lower than that. It's like $14,000 a year.
So are we going to get a Clayborne branch in Hong Kong?
Well, so I think it's important to understand why they would ban it and why tutoring is so popular there. So I think what China's doing it for is their birth rates are down. If it's going to be very expensive for you to raise a child, and if I were to tell you, hey Jerry, you're going to have to spend an extra $100,000 to raise your kid to 10 years old, that would be a consideration for your family, especially if you were under-resourced. So they're trying to get the birth rates up, so they're trying to lower the cost. The reason why tutoring is so expensive there is that their college admissions is not holistic. It's determined by one test. It's the Gaokao test. That determines what university you get into. If you do better on that test, you get into a better university. If you do worse, you don't.
That's
There's
their
nothing
SAT?
Else. That's their everything.
Okay.
They don't take into account extracurricular. There's nothing. It's that test.
Okay.
You get a 99, you get into this school.
Okay.
So, we talk a lot about like the problems in our college admission systems, but our college admissions truly are holistic. The SAT and ACT are only one part, and despite all the issues, they serve a very important purpose here. If all we did was SAT and ACT prep to get into college, we would have a very similar problem here. So, a lot of people have been asking me, they're gonna do something similar in the U.S.? No, because we don't have that same problem here. So I think it's fascinating what they're doing. What they're basically also doing is there's been a lot of fundraising there. I think last year they raised a little over $250 million in ed tech for China to go into tutoring companies. They're forcing all private companies there to go nonprofit. The only way to operate there is to go nonprofit. And I think that's some ways to help regulate it. And I think they're banning fundraising there for ed tech companies. So they are really trying to cinch in tutoring, and there's probably going to be a black market for it. I don't know what that's going to look like, but I think it's really interesting because it highlights the difference of getting into college in China versus getting into college here. We really do have a very holistic system. If you get a perfect SAT score, you're not going to get into Harvard necessarily. Probably there's a good chance you won't get into Harvard with just a perfect SAT. Harvard rejects 90% of perfect SAT scores get rejected from Harvard.
Stop.
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
Because the perfect SAT score is so focused on doing well in the SAT that they're not well-rounded in other departments?
Also, everybody wants to go to Harvard,
okay.
It's a numbers problem with them. But they also, if you get a perfect score and you are very, very invested in the community, you've started a nonprofit and you've had great extracurriculars, then you've probably got a good chance of getting in. So it really is a whole picture thing here in the U.S. I think what it means for international tutoring companies is they're going to have to find a new business model. They're going to have to determine whether or not they have the resources to start a nonprofit arm for China and then face some regulatory issues with operating there. So I thought that was fascinating. Yeah, banning tutoring there.
That's I mean, because it's almost the antithesis of what you think with China and school. Because and maybe the stigma's still not there, but I think it is. When I was coming up, it was like the Chinese students were eating our lunch.
Oh my! If you look at Chinese, their math abilities, when I went to graduate school, I mean, I had my Chinese counterparts teaching me stuff that I had never even heard of. And like, oh yeah, I learned this in like 8th grade. I'm like, this is mind blowing. They are just far and above in terms of math because they've been prepped for it and everything has been in education. They don't go into extracurriculars. There's no well-rounded approach. It's all just academics. And so I think this is hopefully maybe the next thing they could do is have something else other than this Gaokao test. Because if they still have the Gaokao test to get into college, families, like wealthy Chinese families, are just going to find a way to do it. I mean, you could do a VPN or something and get American tutoring. So maybe this means American tutoring companies might actually see a boost.
Multiple comments coming in here. This one's from Jennifer Carini, and it's got a compliment for you. Jennifer Carini says, Jerry, this guest is smart. Please have him on in future shows. Also, please ask him if school is in fact digital from in-person like he is predicting, what is going to be the learning loss of back-to-back years combined? And maybe she's using the wrong phrase. What was the phrase you used where it was like this percentage of knowledge was...
Learning loss, yeah.
Okay, it's learning loss.
Yeah,
it's
learning loss. Yeah, it's about 50, yeah. It depends on the verbal side of things. There's been about only 30 to 40% learning loss, but on the math side, it's about 50%, which means that somebody graduating in algebra this year, Algebra 1, can't really go into Algebra 2 because they've only learned like half of Algebra 1. So they have Algebra 1 half completed or so.
So she wants to ask, what happens if it happens combined on back-to-back years? How it's like, I guess, can you extrapolate that it's amplified even more if it's back-to-back years? Is that a safe assumption?
Yeah,
You see what she's saying,
yeah,
alluding to?
I actually don't think it will be as severe because I think part of the learning loss was getting used to a new system, and I think part of the learning loss was just loss of motivation with students. So that motivation is already lost. So I think that the learning loss for another virtual year would not be as severe as it was last year. I think last year would have been the most severe learning loss that we would have seen.
Interesting.
Now, you're still probably talking about like 30 or 40% learning loss overall, which is still, I don't think that our education system could sustain another year of that without a complete revamp of how things work.
This is from Jackson. Jerry, ask Ali why the private schools in the area are not expanding to get more enrollment. All of the private schools in the area are at capacity and not enrolling more students. That makes no sense to me from a business standpoint. That's Jackson.
Yeah, well, they're not for-profit businesses, they're nonprofits. So they don't, as long as...
All the private schools are nonprofits?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Really?
So if anyone's interested, if you want to see, like when I looked at the data at St. Anne's and Covenant, every nonprofit publishes what's called a 990. You can find out what the budget is. You can find out how much they make in terms of like tuition costs, and you can find out how much they fundraise. You can find out how much the headmaster makes. Headmasters make $250,000 or something. They're all very well.
The headmaster of these private schools are making $250K a year.
So, yeah. Some of the ones in Richmond's even more.
What are you talking, like St. Chris or Collegiate?
Collegiate's probably. I haven't looked recently. It's probably $500,000 or something.
The headmaster of Collegiate is clocking $500,000
probably,
bucks a year.
Yeah. It's one of the top 10 independent schools in the country. So that's why they don't have any incentive to overcrowd their classrooms as long as they meet their budgetary requirements. They're worried about quality of service. So as soon as they have maximum number of students, they don't have any reason to want to grow like rapidly.
James.
In fact, it's actually probably better for them to be waitlisted because then they can increase tuition costs next year.
Yeah.
And if a family says we can't afford it, it's like, oh, so sorry. Best of luck to you in your future endeavors. We're going to take the next person in line.
Right. I think that's exactly right.
Yeah.
James, Lee, there's a few hundred acres along that new road that goes from Target to the Sam's Club. I think utilities are already there. That's close enough to the city and within the urban ring for people to reasonably jump on transit and go anywhere within 10 minutes. That's a great location for new affordable housing. Good comment right there from James Watson. Lee Elberson, Hannah's homemade nut butters.
Yeah. Okay, great. Thanks so much for bringing that. So I have been working with Hannah Deal. She is an entrepreneur in Charlottesville. She's a CIC grad, great young woman, and she started making these nut butters. So if you've been to Whole Foods, you've seen like besides peanut butter, they have almond butter, they have cashew butter. She makes this very unique product called Granola Butter. If you've never had it, she used to be at the farmer's market, and she used to be able to find it in Rebecca's and other places. It is truly unique. In fact, I meant to bring a jar for Judah, and you can have some too, Jerry.
Thank you.
Judah always gets the presents here. But she started the business, I think, about 3 or 4 years ago and saw pretty rapid success. She's got pretty good profit margins. Unfortunately, Hannah is now a friend, and I'm her business consultant. She's faced some health problems, and she's looking to sell her business for $50,000. And I have looked through all of her financials. I've taken some meetings with potential buyers. And full disclosure, I'm not making any money off of this. This is all just to help Hannah out. She's a great individual. If you're interested in learning more, if you have a business that's looking for a very unique product, I think in the entire country, there's maybe one other company that makes granola butter. Very unique. It's an amazing recipe. She can show you everything you need to run the business. Contact Hannah. It's contact@hannahsbutters.com. Judah will put it up. It's already up. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. Again, I would reach out to Hannah if you're interested in a business that is ready to go, has a client base. She's got a client list. I am one of them. I still ask her, if you ever make a batch for somebody, I will buy jars.
Your better half, Alex, says it's so good.
It's truly amazing. We give it away as presents. Again, it's just something unique. You get tired of having peanut butter. It's granola butter, and she sources, her business model was sourcing great materials for it. Local business. If you're interested, you can contact Hannah. I'm happy to help. Answer any questions about her financials once you contact her.
50 G's.
50,000. Yep.
50,000. And 50,000's buy-in? The brand?
It's buying the brand. She's actually, she's got some stock. She's got labels. She's got she's got bottling and things like that. She's got a mixer to help you do it. And she can give you connections to commercial kitchens. Great place to start. You start a commercial kitchen. If you have a bigger business, I would say that's probably preferable because you probably already have a commercial kitchen access, and you can reduce costs and get better than 50% profit margins on it.
Doesn't the brokerage of businesses intrigue you?
I love that. Yeah, if you're interested in selling a business, I'm happy to help. I've helped broker a few business sales now. If you're a CIC business, I will help for free. Yeah. I love helping CIC businesses.
Well, tell me what you do in the brokering of businesses.
Yeah, so valuation of a small company is very difficult. Yeah, if you go to,
it's associated with the founder or the owner in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and so when I've helped broker deals, I've brokered deals of sales within, and I've helped broker other deals. It's really helping them come to an agreement on what the buyer thinks it's worth and what the seller thinks it's worth. When you have a multi-million-dollar business, you put that into a calculator, and it's easy. Here, you have to find a way to get there, and I'm really good at coming up with deals, buyout agreements in terms of minimizing the...
I didn't know you did this.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I love doing this. I think that...
So you're looking at the P&L, you're looking at the balance sheet,
Yep.
You're assessing the equity of the brand by probably looking at social media following.
Sure, yeah. And then looking at
inventory.
Competitive space, inventory. And then also, a lot of it comes down to price and how do you manage a deal. If somebody wants $100,000, somebody's only willing to pay $20,000, how do you bridge that gap? And I am always good at coming up with creative ways to bridge that gap.
This guy is so Renaissance. He can do so many things. So we talked earlier in the week, and I know you saw it, the Halloween store. The Halloween pop-up, $50K asking price, $130,000 in inventory, a seasonal business. I mean, you're not going to get rich doing this, but a seasonal business. Alex, it sounds like you're about to be the new proprietor of a Halloween store, Alex.
I told my wife that, and she...
Alex is his wife.
Alex, I told Alex that, and she actually was intrigued. This would be something we would want to jump on now. If we didn't have such a crazy fall coming up, I think we might.
Would you have legitimately done it?
We would seriously consider it. I don't know if we actually would have done it, but my wife is very methodical. I'm sort of like the very risk-seeking person. That's what makes me a good entrepreneur.
Yeah.
She's very methodical, so I can see the entrepreneurial possibilities of this, and she would be able to lay everything out. And she loves Halloween. It's her favorite holiday. So I think it's a great deal. I think we know why the business is for sale. It's just that speculation of how is Halloween going to work this year.
Yeah.
Any other year, I think I'd be instant purchase. I think there's some,
And what he's saying is why the business is for sale is because Halloween basically did not happen last year. So that's why they have $130,000 in inventory. It's on Craigslist now, guys. You can see the ad. Just click business for sale in Charlottesville on Craigslist. $130,000 in inventory, $50K asking price. There's plenty of open shopping centers. You could easily find a 2-month, what would you start? You'd probably start early next month. You'd run it to November 1. Well, you'd probably need a couple days to clear the store.
Go to Fashion Square Mall.
I mean, Seminole Square, Fashion Square, Albemarle Square.
Yeah.
All the squares.
Yeah.
I don't have a square to spare. You know where that's from?
Seinfeld, man. Come on, I know.
I don't have a square to spare.
Do not question me on my Seinfeld knowledge.
Elaine Bennis. I don't have a square to spare. All right, and we're going to close on this topic. Lee and the fabulous Alex have a wedding planned for Ireland. Is it in 3 weeks?
Yeah, Alex's cousin is getting married September 9th, and we're supposed to go out September 4th. And so, I think I commiserate with a lot of people that are hesitant right now to travel. And, Alex and I have been fully vaccinated for several months now. Ireland is level 4, very high risk to travel to.
Did you commit with the save the date? Did you already send the save?
Already committed with the save the date. I know the groom. I went to his bachelor party. That was the bachelor party in Kentucky.
Okay.
He's Alex's cousin. Alex's parents are going there. All of our family's going.
From Cali, is it?
He's from Cali, yeah.
Okay.
And his wife is from Ireland, and it's one of those weird things. If we get there and it's closed down, it's going to be a tough few weeks, and then I think we're required to take a COVID test and wait a day for it to come back before we're allowed entry back into the U.S. If things change and we're required to quarantine.
You're making quite a commitment to go to this wedding, is basically what you're saying.
Making a big commitment. And, I think I told Judah this. Last week we were supposed to go see Saved by the 90s.
Yeah.
You ever seen them, the 90s cover band? They come to Charlottesville. Supposed to go to Richmond with Scott Williams. And I thought, the reason why I'm not going to go is I'm going to be worried the whole time. I'm not going to really be able to enjoy myself. And I think that's the calculus right now is, should I spend 2 weeks somewhere where the whole time I'm going to be worried about the implications of my travel? I have to explain it to everybody.
Spending ducats. Dropping money.
Dropping money, yeah.
Serious money. I mean, what did you budget for this? Travel, hotel, wedding gift, everything. I mean, you're probably talking $2,500?
More, yeah.
3 Gs?
Probably closer to 4, but yeah.
Okay, so 4 Gs. That's everything.
Yeah.
That's a hell of a lot of money to spend where you're not basically living in the moment as you normally would.
Yeah.
Is that not right?
That's the calculus,
Yeah.
right? I mean, like cost aside, like, are you going to spend that time worried you're spending money to worry the entire time? That's the calculus. But
so it sounds like you're mailing a gift.
We're going. At this point, we are still going. I've told all my clients that we are still going. I'll let you know if something changes.
Okay,
buddy.
so when is what is the over under? What are the odds of you guys making this
Oh man,
trip?
don't make me say this on the air.
What are the odds?
Brandon's watching.
Your brother-in-law is watching. Jared's watching.
Jared's watching, yeah.
He says you and Alex make a great match.
Yeah, Jared's a great guy. Jared's
8 hats.
Yeah, Jared's business is our business is doing amazing right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would say the odds 62.5%.
62.5%. You make the trip.
Yeah.
No, I see.
I'm giving myself a lot of.
This is the only time in this entire interview that he's BS'd me. The only time I can tell right now by his body language and his face. He doesn't believe those odds at all.
I don't.
Yeah.
It's probably closer to 50-50.
50-50.
I don't know. We want to go very badly. That's what it is. So it's really a matter of want to go. Like if we want to go, then we'll go unless the CDC tells us we can't.
Alex says we would have canceled it if it wasn't for a wedding.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah.
I mean, it's because they love their family.
Definitely.
Yeah, that's what it comes down to. Dude, it's 2 o'clock. You're amazing. You're great in this setting. 90 minutes flew by, right?
It always flies by whenever we're on, man.
This is fun.
Yeah, it's always so much fun. And I love now that I'm keeping up with like your headlines to revisit some of them. Because I do comment on YouTube. You never see my YouTube comments.
I need to. I don't. So, you know what it is?
Because I guess people watch through other platforms.
Well, you know what it is So
does anyone else watch through YouTube? It's a great place to.
This MacBook Air, if I have like 15 tabs open, and each tab is streaming the show in some capacity, the processor can't keep up.
That must be pretty intensive then, because MacBooks are really solid. I'm not an Apple guy, but I know that their hardware is really solid. I'll never own an Apple product.
15 tabs open of streaming video, it jams it up a little bit.
Yeah.
So I'll do I've heard from other people that I'm not reading the comments on YouTube as well. That's something I need to be mindful of.
Yeah.
How about give us a tease when we get you, because we love having you on the show. We got to get you on more often. That's on me to do. When we the next topic that you would want to cover, or a topic that you've recently been thinking about or reading about. This dude has a voracious appetite for reading. Voracious appetite for data.
Okay, you know what I wanted to talk about.
Well, he wanted to talk climate change.
I've just finished Bill Gates' book, How to Avoid a Climate Disaster, and given what we saw with the announcement on Monday about we are headed for a climate catastrophe unless we make serious changes, I always think about like, oh, but that's a global problem. What do I do as a business owner to like make any sort of impact whatsoever?
Yeah, and my hesitancy within that topic was exactly what he said earlier, that it's hard to localize it.
Yeah, it's like, why is me composting making any difference whatsoever?
Right.
And I think Juan Diego Wade, one of his things that he talked about was climate change, and I had some conversations with him. I was like, that's got to be a tough thing to discuss locally, right?
And what did he say? Yes.
Yes, he says but it is still it's an important topic to him. So I think having more leaders like Juan and us talk about it just makes it easier, and I'm happy to break down what I know about it and why it makes sense for us to put research dollars in this, and then also what you can do personally, right? You've heard about composting, why compost? So let's put that as one of the topics, and we can end with it, and if nobody cares, we don't have to talk about it, but I'm happy to bring up some interesting pieces about climate change.
I would like to bring up next time the experiences of being a business broker. And maybe we can do some more business brokerage deals. But I find it fascinating that you do that, because I often get, owning an advertising agency, either current clients or folks that have heard of us say, my business is for sale, can you help us get some awareness for it, and how do you value it? And valuing the businesses is very difficult. Like, a lot of the owners of the business are like, oh, it's 2x sales or 3x sales. Yeah. I'm like, dude, you can't just straight up say it's 3x sales for
the multipliers do not work in small business.
Exactly, that's what I say.
So I'm happy, I'd love to talk, because there's many different sale paths. Like, is someone who doesn't know you're going to buy the business, or are you going to try to sell it internally? It's always best to sell it internally, because
institutional memory.
Yeah, and also people really would understand the value of it, and you could offer owner financing and things like that. So yeah, anybody who's interested in selling a business, I'd love to have a conversation. I just
got this tweet from Gary Hernandez. Or excuse me, direct message from Gary Hernandez. Jerry, tell your guest I watched the show from start to finish. This is one of your best ones. Yes, please have him back on the show.
Love it. Thank you, guys. So I really appreciate everybody chiming in and asking questions, and I'm always happy to answer to the best of my ability.
You're a good people. Thank you. Lee Elberson.
Love you.
Same. I love you. And don't
Scott Williams says that.
Scott Williams, don't marginalize it by putting man at the end.
Yeah, it's a good thing, yeah.
It's just men to men have to say this more to each other.
Yeah.
I love you. And we learned that from Scott Williams. So Lee Elberson crushed it per usual. Tomorrow, Chris Allen, comedian in the house. What? And we're going to be talking about the new album that he has recently released. This man has a very unique perspective on life, Chris Allen.
Is he on Spotify?
He is on Spotify.
Oh, cool.
He's headlining major venues now.
Awesome.
A local comedian that is now gaining nationwide traction in comedy clubs. His album's doing well. So that's the plan for tomorrow's show. Real Talk at 10:15 a.m. has got Sean Tubbs and Neil Williamson. So if you're really into housing trends, data.
Neil Williams is a data god, right?
Free Enterprise Forum. He's amazing.
Yeah.
So Real Talk tomorrow at 10:15 a.m. For Lee Elberson, my friend, the CEO of Clayborne Education, and for Judah Wickower, our director, my name is Jerry Miller, and this is the I Love CVille Show. Hasta luego. Dude.
Man, always I feel like the shows just keep getting better. I love that we get to now run through some of your other stuff and